Hey everybody, I've got another one of my 45-45 league games to go over with you. This one will be pretty short and sweet because it was a disaster, but I do have an excuse, even though I'm not really making excuses here. Uh, I guess I am, but I'm not really trying to make an excuse here. I'm just telling you what actually happened. I had a car problem a couple of nights before this game, and I had somebody coming over to look at the game, or I'm sorry, look at the car, not the game. I don't care about the game. Coming over to look at my car, and I had to be available for them, and I had to be available for them during this game. So I was really, really in some trouble as far as getting this game in. Almost decided just to forfeit it. Decided to go ahead and see what I could do, and it didn't go so well. I had prepared for one opening, and he played a completely different one. So I was off balance from the beginning. He played the Sicilian, which I know a little bit of. I always like to play C3, and we kind of got through this opening until he played G6. And I didn't really know how to respond to G6, so I was trying to come up with something. And I was really trying to come up with something fairly quickly as I was a little bit distracted during the game. I came up with this, what I was thinking at the time would be sort of a flexible plan, moving my bishop to E3. I thought I could possibly later on play queen to D2 and maybe with my knight on C3, possibly castle queenside at some time. I wanted that to be an option, but it wasn't really an attractive option with the open C file. But I did want it to be an option. I thought bishop E3 was sort of flexible enough to where I wasn't committing myself necessarily that direction. But having this dark diagonal battery here to combat his G7 fianchetto of his bishop and his kingside castling would be something I would consider. So I sort of considered bishop e3 sort of a flexible, almost waiting move just to see where we were going to go. And I also wanted to get my kingside pieces out so I could castle to either side. So I played bishop c4, which seemed sort of natural. Didn't seem to be a purpose for bishop b5 yet. Probably would have been a little bit better in retrospect. I think this is probably okay. This move right here, however, really, really, really caused me some problems. And I spent a lot of time that I didn't have, a lot of time trying to decide what I was going to do after queen b6. Now, as you can see, queen b6 double attacks my d4 pawn and my b2 pawn. And the b2 pawn seemed to be more important to me to save just because it looks like I might also have my a1 rook under attack in that scenario, especially with this long diagonal open here. I really thought that this was going to be a big problem for me. Uh, I eventually sort of panicked and played queen b3. Once again, I understand this is a terrible move. It's pretty bad on the spot. Leads to real disaster for me. Not the end of the game disaster, but definitely you're going to see the resulting position not pretty at all. What I should have done here is probably just knight f3, and there's an interesting line here. Let's see if I can remember it, where he's going to take queen b2, going to play knight b d2, and this is going to protect my my rook. He's going to go ahead and take. Let's see if I can remember. I think in this line, it's knight takes, and then is it bishop takes? I'm not really sure of the line. What? Something like this. I don't actually think this is it. So yeah, it might be this. Something like this, where now the queen has only queen c3 here, and this it's something like this where it's basically just a draw where these two moves can be just repeated, and there really isn't a better move for either side, so it just turns into a quick draw. So there is definitely a way out of this without compromising everything, as I did with queen b3. But it's what I played, and as you can see, it leads to some nastiness here. Obviously wins a pawn, and doubles my pawns even further. So it turns out that knight d5 is pretty good in this position. I noticed knight d5 a couple of moves later, and it turned into a pretty good little trick, or so I thought. I can't remember why I was concerned here enough to castle queenside, which seems odd at this time. Um, it seems like I wanted to protect my b2 pawn and centralize my rook, something like that. Honestly, I can't remember what kind of silly thing I thought in my head would make this a good move. Queens are off the board, so I wasn't too concerned about the king being exposed. So I thought this was probably an okay move. I'm thinking that's what I was thinking. Like I said, I wasn't devoting a whole lot of thought to this game, and that's a real disappointment to me. So anyway, knight d5 comes along. Now knight d5 is threatening this king and rook fork, obviously on c7. But there's also, what I noticed was this little hint of a trapping the rook, where if he responds by moving the rook, I'll just go ahead and show you the moves played in the game. If he responds by moving the king like this, I'm going to attack the rook. The rook can't move to a7 because it's attacked by the bishop. And if it moves to b8, then it looks like I've trapped the rook. And so I noticed this tactic pretty quickly while I was running in and out of the room trying to deal with my visitors. And I got excited thinking, okay, well, I'm going to come out of this with the rook ahead and he'll probably just resign and I'll actually have won this game. Well, this is actually maybe the worst thing that could have happened for me. Finding a tactic like this that doesn't actually win the rook and he finds a way to weasel out of it, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way. If he finds a way to, I'll say, squirm out of it, then basically what it did was completely demoralize me, and I basically gave up and didn't have time to concentrate on what was at least a little bit of a complicated tactic anyway. And I wound up losing the game because of that, just because of an oversight when I ran in the room and didn't have time to concentrate before I had to leave, so I made a quick move. So it sounds like I'm making all kinds of excuses. I'm not. My opponent played well and beat me pretty soundly here. So he does find the escape here, which is to move bishop h6 and then attack the rook with his bishop to g4. And I thought, well, it was a really quick move, and I didn't have time to think about it. I thought, well, I'll just at least win a pawn here, but that doesn't work at all. So it turns out I just lose the game, just basically due to frustration. So it's an embarrassing end of the game, but I wanted to get this game up there just sort of in a completeness sake, showing that I am definitely capable of falling apart, especially with distractions, but well done to my opponent, finding the good moves there in what looked like a tricky situation with his b8 rook. His opening was pretty good, even though it looks like it would have possibly led directly to a draw. It was still a pretty good opening, and he beat me. And I say congratulations to him, and I will look ahead to my next game, in which I'll probably get that out here in just a few minutes. Okay, thanks for watching.